Take a moment and think about the village or town you call home, the crops you eat, the cows you see, and the local languages you and your neighbors speak. Where did it all come from? If we were to rewind the clock 1,000 years, this landscape would look very different. East Africa was not the crowded, bustling place it is today. Instead, it was home to small, scattered groups of people who moved freely across open lands. These original inhabitants were known as the Bushmen and the Kwekwe. They lived with a light footprint, moving with the seasons to find wild fruits, edible roots, and animals to hunt, without building permanent houses or fencing in huge herds. So, how do we get from a quiet landscape shared by a few nomadic families to a thriving, diverse region of millions of people today? The answer lies in epic journeys of survival. Over centuries, different communities faced severe challenges that pushed them out of their old homes and discovered new resources that pulled them here. These movements shaped the ethnic and cultural landscape of modern East Africa. This chart shows a geographic overview of Africa around 1000 AD. To understand who arrived in East Africa, we look outside its modern borders, to the Cameroon Highlands, South Sudan, and South Africa. Let's start in the West, with the ancestors of modern Uganda's largest language group, the Bantu. Originating in the Cameroon Highlands, they slowly pushed eastward toward the Great Lakes. They left because their original home was getting too crowded, leading to land shortages and internal conflicts. But they kept moving east because they were searching for deep, fertile soil. When they arrived, they brought a technology that gave them a massive advantage in this wild terrain: the knowledge to make tools out of iron. Before this, farming in dense forests was incredibly difficult, but an iron hoe can quickly clear thick brush and turn over hard soil and allow a family to grow staple crops like yams and sorghum. Because they could reliably grow food, the Bantu could stop moving and build permanent, settled villages. Now let's look at this diagram tracing a second wave. While the Bantu were arriving from the west, another group called the Luo, or River Lake Nilotes, was traveling south from South Sudan, following the River Nile. The Luo were herders, and they faced severe, prolonged droughts. With dropping water levels and the overstocking of their livestock, they had to keep moving constantly in search of reliable water and fresh pasture to keep their herds alive. They brought expert pastoral skills, introducing large herds of short-horned cattle into the region. Since they moved along the waterways, they also brought advanced fishing methods that helped them thrive along the lakes and rivers. These groups succeeded because they had exactly what the land demanded. The Bantu used iron to master the rich soils and forests, while the Luo used their cattle and fishing skills to master the savannas and waterways. Looking at our map one last time, we see a much later arrival. In the 1840s, a group known as the Ngoni traveled thousands of miles north from South Africa into southern Tanzania. The Ngoni weren't searching for farmland. They were running for their lives. They were fleeing a period of brutal, widespread wars in southern Africa, sparked by King Shaka Zulu, a time of violent chaos known as the Mfecane. To survive this terrifying journey, the Ngoni had to adapt. They developed highly organized military tactics and fought in close combat using a specialized weapon called an assegai, a short, strong stabbing spear. This diagram illustrates their most famous tactical innovation, the cow horn formation. The center group would engage the enemy head-on, while the two sides, acting like horns, would quickly sweep around and trap them. This aggressive style caused massive displacement, but forced weaker, scattered tribes to unite for defense. Our imagination often fills these gaps with images of massive armies marching on a fixed schedule. In reality, except for those fleeing direct military violence, these movements were much more gradual. Migration was a slow process that took hundreds of years. Small families would settle down, farm until the soil lost its nutrients, and then move just a few miles down the road, relocating generation after generation. Just like drops of ink slowly spreading and mixing on a canvas, these migrating families eventually met the original hunter-gatherers. Through decades of living side by side and intermarrying, they absorbed one another, creating entirely new blended communities. This chart breaks down the final outcome of these centuries of movement. By bringing different skills and customs together, the Bantu, Luo, and Ngoni established the economic, social, and political foundations of modern East Africa. Because iron tools and settled farming created a reliable food surplus, populations grew rapidly. This expansion turned small, scattered family groups into larger, more complex communities that required organized leadership, eventually forming the centralized kingdoms and chiefdoms that governed the region. Socially, new customs took root. The Bantu and Nilotic languages spread far and wide, and unique traditions, like the Mpako pet name system introduced by the Luo, became part of daily life. Economically, the nomadic hunt for wild food was replaced by a system of iron smelting, settled agriculture, and vast networks of cattle trade. When your grandparents share stories about your clan or your tribe's origin, they are describing these exact survival journeys. Your personal identity is built on the choices these ancestors made 1,000 years ago. The modern towns, the diverse faces, and the rich languages of East Africa are the living result of this shared history, built step by the people who walked here.